call. We're going to be speaking tonight with our special guest expert, Melanie Steele, who is a registered dietitian here in Vancouver. Hi, Melanie.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing this. Thank you for suggesting this. This was actually your idea. And as it's turned out, this topic that you are going to, that you're specializing in now and going to be sharing with us seems to be a hot topic right now. We've got, I think, over 250 people registered for tonight's event, and it's our second event this year on this topic. So I know it's something that I was saying just before we started, we're all like aware that there's been some new information. Many of us are curious about that, how that impacts our health, our social life, our decision-making going forward. And I know you've got some tips for us planned too. So I am going to play admin tonight, everyone. I'm really glad that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to join us for this, to put your own name at the top of the to-do list and to learn something today. I'm a little under the weather. My voice is not that good, so I'm probably going to be on mute until we come back at the end. Melanie, is it okay if we take a few questions
once
you're finished sharing? And I'll come back on then. And otherwise, I'll let you take it away, and I will continue to let people through the waiting room if we have some late joiners, and I'll moderate the chat.
Great.
Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you very much, Shirley. I'm happy to be here. And I did suggest a topic actually because it came from a lot of my clients that I see in my practice were kind of considering making changes themselves, partly because of the news in Canada about the changes to the guidelines, but also just kind of some reflection on how they're doing and how it makes them feel. So I thought it would be a useful topic to talk about, just to understand what the new Canadian drinking guidelines are. Not everybody knows exactly what they are, and just to understand a little bit behind why the changes were made. So what are the implications, to our health, especially as women, as females. And then spend most of the time kind of talking a lot about what we can do to make change, whether that's exploring our decision to change, and then looking at some tips and strategies for cutting back and decreasing, if that is something that we decide to do. And then I also just wanted to say that, as a dietitian, I'm always helping people kind of take morality off of their plate. And so I also want to kind of take it out of our wine glass today and just be very clear that we're talking about information to help you make decisions about your health and what you do with your body. No one is here to judge about whether you make a decision to drink or not, or whether you decide to keep drinking. So just wanted to make that very clear. It's just for information and to help you. So if you do have the workbook, if you want to take some notes, and go ahead and do that. If you're watching this on the replay, you can. And I know, like Shirley mentioned, that she did pop the link to it in the chat, and it'll also be in the email for the reminder emails, I think, so you can go back and get it there. So to get started, we'll talk about what are the current guidelines in Canada. So I know maybe some people are tuning in from the States, but Canada recently changed its what's called its low risk drinking guidelines. And the previous guidelines were out in 2011. And so there's quite a significant change in the research and understanding of how alcohol consumption affects our health in that 10 years. So even though it was released in 2023, it was actually last year that the guidelines were kind of formalized and came out. So I thought I would just share with you what those are so that we know. So right now, the way it stands is no risk means no drinking. So zero drinks is zero risk to your health. 2 drinks a week, not per day, per week, is what is considered low risk drinking. And so what that means is there's not a guarantee that there's no, potential issue or risk to your health from choosing to drink, but 2 a week is considered low risk. 3 to 6 standard drinks a week is what's considered to be moderate risk. And what this means is at this level, we do actually see increased risk for incidence of breast cancer, liver cirrhosis, things like injury and falls, which I do point out because for women who have gone through the menopause transition, we also know that bone health is really important, and anything that we can do to reduce our falls, which could, be implicated in fractures is important to know too. So we do have to consider physical injury and health as well.
Melanie, can I
That's a
interrupt you
question.
for a second? The risk numbers, the new numbers for
Yeah,
the week, you're talking for women.
for women.
It's
No,
different for
no,
men and
it's
youth, or
not.
it's the
It's not
same?
anymore.
Okay,
It's
thank
not
you.
anymore. Yeah, so that's a really good point of clarification. So it used to be that there was different guidelines for men and women. And in the States, currently that's still the case. So they had their drinking guidelines, my understanding comes from the dietary guidelines. So right now, those are current up until 2025. And so ours were similar to what the States are now in the past. So it used to be 1 drink per day for women and 2 per men, and now there's no difference. And this is because at a low intake, there's not that much of a difference in risk to health. And once it gets to be into that moderate and high risk, there is a difference between the sexes, but it's still considered moderate and high risk. So this is men, women across the board, the same. And so when you get to 7 standard drinks a week or more, this is what's considered high risk, and it's increasingly high risk with every drink from that 2 and upwards. And 7 standard drinks a week or more is where we see that increased risk for heart disease or stroke as well. So what is a standard drink? So it's not, what you decide to kind of pour yourself when you get home. There is a really good graphic on the website, and I didn't actually include it in my book, and I don't know if it makes sense to share it right now. If that's going to cause problems, surely I can share it if everyone can see this. Yeah, so this is kind of what I was just sharing and saying, that the 0 is no risk, 1 to 2 is considered low risk, between 3 and 6 is moderate, and then 7, 8, 9 and beyond is kind of increasingly higher risk. And on the side here is where we can see what the standard drink sizes are. So for beer or one of those pre-mixed cocktails or ciders that you can find, we're talking about 341 milliliters, that's 12 ounces, is considered to be 1 drink, but that's at 5% alcohol. And so if you're going to like a craft brewery, for example, sometimes I've seen a stout as high as 9%. So that's kind of something to kind of factor in and consider. With wine, we're looking at 142 milliliter pour, which is 5 ounces, and that's at 12%. There are a few wines that might be, 13 and a half. You can find those long leggy reds at 14%. And then for a spirit, so this is like your vodka, gin, bourbon, things like that, 1.5 ounce pour, which is 43 milliliters, I think, at 40%. And so one of the suggestions that I make, kind of with my clients, is to actually count your drinks if you're trying to do an assessment of, well, how much am I actually drinking per week, and how does this compare to the new guidelines? Am I moderate risk or am I actually high risk? And there's a calculator. If you Google standard drink calculator, the University of British Columbia actually has one, and as one of their research arms, and you can put in the volume that you're drinking, the alcohol percentage, and it would actually convert it for you. So if there's some favorites that you have at home in your fridge or in your liquor cabinet and you're just curious, that's a good resource to kind of check out and see where you're at. But the one thing that the guidelines didn't have, I was looking to see if there was something around osteoporosis and the guidelines, and I didn't see anything kind of specific, but according to Osteoporosis Canada, they say it's much higher. So when it's more than 3 drinks a day, that is when we're kind of really seeing that increased risk of osteoporosis. So, but there's also no research right now that shows if you kind of keep your drinking to that low risk, that you're actually reducing your risk. So really, when it comes to, the people that are, in the perimenopause or postmenopausal, in that transition, we're kind of thinking about, how does this affect our breast cancer risk? How does this affect our heart health? And I do also consider things like osteoporosis and fracture risk. And so I would be looking at, are we having increased risk of falling or injury or things like that? Because that kind of coincides with potentially having issues with broken bones and osteoporosis. So that's the guidelines right now. For some people, it seems a bit shocking because it is quite low than what it used to be, right? And so, again, the decision to drink or to drink less is completely up to you, but this is the information. And so now that you have that, so you can kind of make that decision and understand. When it comes to people who are either postmenopausal or, going through perimenopause, there are other factors that we may want to consider when it comes to drinking. And so alcohol can affect things like hot flashes, night sweats. So they are a trigger for a lot of people. They also affect our sleep. So there is, we get that nice sedative effect sometimes, which is a draw for some people to have, a drink in the evening. However, alcohol does disrupt that, like our deep sleep. So we won't get as good quality restorative sleep when we're drinking. So sometimes, it has the opposite result as you're intended. So I wouldn't look to alcohol as a solution for your sleep problems, because it's actually going to make it worse. So these are just some other things to factor in, whether or not you want to continue to drink or reduce your drinking. Sleep and things like hot flashes can certainly be worsened. And then I'm also, as a dietitian, kind of considering people's nutritional status. So alcohol does affect our ability to digest and properly absorb nutrients. So just, having a drink alongside a meal, you're going to reduce the absorption of B vitamins, magnesium, and zinc. And so these are all really important nutrients. It's also a gut irritant, like alcohol. So it can, disrupt or harm, the lining of your digestive tract. Of course, this will also be, the more that you drink, the more that this happens. And certainly if you're an individual that has IBS or IBS symptoms, we want to be kind of looking at reducing our alcohol intake, because that could be a trigger, and that is something that affects us there as well. And then weight management is another, very highly personal topic, but one that comes up. And so alcohol is, related to that. It is a source of energy in and of itself. So somewhere between our fats and then protein and carbohydrates is the amount of energy that you would get from alcohol. And usually when we are choosing to consume alcohol, we might be just a little bit less attuned to what we're eating. Our eating habits sometimes are a little bit different. So sometimes there is an increased energy intake that coincides with alcohol intake. And so if weight loss is a goal of yours, and again, that's a very highly personal decision for people to make, just something to look at there. And how does that affect your eating behaviors, and how is that affecting your energy intake, and what does it do to your decisions around eating and your eating behaviors? We also, and again, because of that disruption on sleep, we also know that sleep is tied into weight management. So when we're not sleeping well, our appetite hormones are changed. So we kind of have increased cravings for carbohydrates and things like that. And again, that attunement disruptor. So it's really hard for kind of us to be mindful and tune into, are we feeling full? Are we feeling hungry? And all of those types of things if we're consuming alcohol. And then again, the last consideration that I've mentioned before, but I really think is important, is that impact on your safety. So just your physical safety in terms of your surroundings, or just, are you going to trip and fall? And we want to be kind of considering those things. I don't know if you want to keep the screen up, because like I said, Shirley, earlier on, I don't have any slides, but if you are following along in the workbook, I did include an activity called Explore the Decision to Drink. So we don't have to kind of go through it right now, but I just wanted to walk through that. If you're watching this on the replay, it could be a good time to kind of hit pause and grab a pen, and you could go through it for yourself. And I've used this with clients who do want to consider reducing their alcohol intake. They may be have been in the high range, and they just have a goal of bringing it down. And I've used this with other kind of health behavior decision making. And sometimes we think, we know the costs, we know the benefits, but when you sit down and actually kind of analyze it and look at the nuance and write it out, it can just help you make a more informed decision. So there's a place for you to kind of jot down the benefits of changing. So whether that be just reducing your overall intake, maybe you look and realize that currently your usual habits put you in the high risk category, and you want to bring yourself down to the moderate risk, or maybe you're considering abstinence. So what would those benefits of changing be? So certainly we know there's going to be the benefits of reducing your risk for, for the health things we talked about. So reducing your risk for breast cancer, reducing your risk for heart disease, potentially, if you're bringing it down to the moderate or low risk category. And then, what might the benefits of not changing be? So, alcohol is a great social lubricant. And so for a lot of people, that is maybe that's even a key part of a relationship that you have with some people. And so reducing or changing that might impact that. And so that could be something that you're wanting to consider. Then on the flip side of that, what are the costs of changing versus the costs of not changing? And so again, it's kind of the same question, but a slightly different way of looking at it. So if you do have a person in your life and you're always getting together with drinks, the cost of not drinking might be a loss of that relationship, or a changing what that relationship looks like, right? So that might be something that you're weighing against the benefits of changing. And then the cost of not changing, are you keeping yourself in a higher risk category? Do you have other risks for breast cancer? And so alcohol is a modifiable one, and so maybe there are some other risks that you don't have the opportunity to modify. So you want to bring your overall risk down by changing this behavior. And so not doing that, could be a cost to you. There's also just the financial cost of drinking is quite high. I saw an article in the New York Times saying that New York is like one of the most expensive places to drink, which is no surprise. It's a pretty expensive city. I was out last Friday with my husband for date night, and I saw on their special board, it was like glass of champagne, $29. And I just was like, oh my gosh, that's almost double the minimum wage in our province right now. So it's quite, that is a good driver, a good motivator in and of itself. I know for a lot of people, you can, save a lot of money if you're not drinking out or not drinking at all. So that is a tool that I hope maybe is helpful for you in making some decisions around whether or not you want to change your drinking at all, if it's something you're considering. And please, feel free to use that tool for other decisions that you might be wanting to make. And so we'll talk now a little bit more about some strategies for reducing, if that is something that you so choose to do. So the first thing I always suggest, like I said, is just counting your drinks. So if you want to change something, you kind of need to start by knowing, where am I at right now? So just kind of look at an average week and do this without any kind of judgment. Really, like, we're approaching it with curiosity. It's just information. We just want to know our starting point. So you can certainly, like I suggested, Google that standard drink calculator and see if that's a helpful tool, and just find out where you are at. And then what is your weekly goal? Weekly goal being a maximum, not necessarily one that you're striving to get to, but do you want to go from the high risk category to the moderate risk category? Do you want to go from the moderate to the low risk? Maybe you're considering kind of not really drinking at all, or drinking sporadically. But if you're just kind of looking to reduce, I think, what are the strategies that we can decrease our overall intake? How can we delay our drinking, because that often results in an overall decrease, or can we dilute what we're doing or what we're drinking, so that we're consuming less? So some of the tips that I have is maybe changing up your routine. So consider, excuse me, how does your daily routine or weekly routine facilitate drinking? Are you the type of person that likes to come home and, maybe crack a beer or pour a glass of wine at the end of a hard day? Is there an opportunity to kind of change the first thing that you do when you get home, so that you're maybe not reaching for that glass of wine or drink? So there could be something there to explore as a strategy. Committing to a certain number of alcohol-free nights a week can be helpful for some people, especially if drinking is something that you regularly like to do, most nights of the week. So even just having a couple nights where you say, these nights, maybe Tuesday and Thursday, I don't drink. And that just makes the decision easier because we're coming up on patio season. And so there might be, invitations, to go places after work. And if you just have, made the decision ahead of time, for your health that, Tuesdays and Thursdays, for example, are not drinking nights. If you're out on a Tuesday, it's just, well, today's Tuesday, so I don't drink. Right. So that could, can be a strategy that helps. Another one is alternating. So one alcoholic drink for a non-alcoholic drink. I usually suggest water. And so this is a great way to help stay hydrated, but certainly you could do even just a non-alcoholic version of the drink that you like. So there's lots of non-alcoholic beers. And there's more and more non-alcoholic versions, both at liquor stores and in restaurants that we're seeing these days, which is really great. So it's a little bit easier to still kind of join in the festivities, but without having alcohol. Another strategy is to delay your first drink. So again, if you're that person that likes to come home and have one, right after work, could you wait until dinner time, or could you wait until after dinner, right? So usually if you're delaying the time that you start drinking, it kind of does result in an overall decrease in the evening. If you're going out, maybe skipping a cocktail before dinner comes too is another way to do it. My favorite strategy is to dilute the drink. So I think I read somewhere a long time ago that Bill Murray, of all people, likes to fill a pint glass full of ice and then top it with champagne. And that was how he made it through award season. And so I take it one step further and I do half Prosecco and half sparkling. So I know maybe some champagne connoisseurs might stick their nose up at that, but I think it's a great way to still be able to enjoy, and takes a long time to get through that drink. It's very refreshing and you're getting some water, and so you're not really drinking that much actually overall. So sometimes, depending on the type of drink you like to enjoy, you can just make it less strong, right? And so that's a way to have less. And then kind of, as I mentioned, switching to an alcohol-free version of your drink. Sometimes you just want to have something. If it's not really about the alcohol, then that might be a sufficient strategy for you. So those are kind of my tips, and I have some clients that use them, and they find that they're helpful. I included a little mocktail recipe for anybody that is interested and would like to try it out. It's pretty good. And that's kind of what I wanted to share with everybody tonight. So I don't know if there are questions, Shirley, or any that you had about.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. I think we do have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I'm glad you kept this slide up, because we had a previous conversation about the paradigm around counting drinks. So I was speaking with a physician who asked her patient, because it's just part of a regular intake form, do you drink? And she said, no, not the patient said, no, not really, just a couple of glasses of wine with dinner. And so the physician wrote down 14 being the number of drinks per week. And the woman, like, she was just, whoa, wait a second, I don't drink 14 drinks a week. That can't be me. And so there's kind of like a little bit of disassociation with counting our drinks. Do you want to share some insights on that?
Yeah, and and that's my experience too. I ask about alcohol intake for sure on my client intake, and usually I'm kind of clarifying, is it every day, because that means it's this much, and what size wine glass or what size pour sometimes comes into it, and we do kind of not realize how much it adds up over the course of the week when it's just one or two, right? It doesn't have that much of an effect usually on us, right? So it doesn't seem like we're drinking a lot, but it does add up. So certainly I have had that experience too, and research does suggest that people underreport drinking. So I'm in the habit of believing my clients when they tell me things, but I do know that there is a stigma still sometimes associated with drinking, and research supports actually that it's higher for women. So sometimes when people say I have 5 drinks a week, I do wonder, is that actually 5, or is it more, right? Because you don't feel comfortable sharing. And I do encourage people to be honest with their healthcare professionals.
Right. I mean, I think
properly, provide education around things.
I think that's a great tip. And like, I will be the first to admit that I probably have underreported lots of things, trips through the drive-through, fries instead of salad, and alcohol drinks. I mean, you just, if you're not in the habit, but yet we are a culture now that a decade or so ago, we didn't track our sleep or count our steps. And now we've kind of moved into this counting culture. So hopefully this will be beneficial.
Yeah. And I like, counting it's just information. And so
Not for
I always
judgment.
reiterate, it's not for judgment. We just want to know so that we can make a decision around it. That's it. Right. It's not good or bad or anything.
Right. Okay, so our questions, I'll just give you a heads up, pertain to absorption of supplements, and then maybe a little unpacking from the report about the specific risks. I know we've got it here on the screen about breast and colon cancer in particular, but if you have any insights on that, that would be great. So
sure.
The first question is does alcohol consumption affect the absorption of supplements such as magnesium?
Yeah, so it does if you're having a lot of alcohol and if you're timing your kind of supplement with it. So this is a common thing. There haven't been studies to show or to test, if you have a drink and then you take a supplement, what happens, because we're not in the habit of just giving people alcohol to research, because alcohol is a harm. But we do know from studies on, people that have issues with substance abuse, that we see that there are like decreases in nutrient absorption. So my guess is this question is, if I have a glass or two of wine at night and then I take magnesium to help with my sleep, am I now not absorbing it? And probably not as much, probably not. But to the full extent, I wouldn't be able to say. If you're not taking your magnesium supplement for sleep, maybe you could take it in the morning if you have a drink in the afternoon. So I don't know if that helps answer that person's question, but we do know for sure that magnesium is one of kind of the nutrients that we see is quite low in people that are regularly drink.
Excellent. And just spread the timing apart if you are choosing to drink or.
Yeah. And so sometimes with my clients, if drinking is a regular thing, like we might explore whether or not maybe a multivitamin is a good thing to have, just to kind of cover the bases there. Right. Yeah.
Great. Marilyn has shared her story about being alcohol free, but I may have a glass of wine for Easter and I feel conflicted.
Oh,
do you hear a lot of this like guilt and shame with your
yes,
clients?
I do because I work in food. So unfortunately, I hear a lot about it. And, you're well within the guidelines, right? They're right there on the screen. Right. So I would say, hopefully that alleviates your guilt. And yeah, I mean, you're doing that, if you feel better and you feel good and, a couple times over the holiday, you want to have a drink or two, that's okay. You're not probably doing great harm to your health with a drink on Easter, and so the guilt, that's something that you would maybe have to work on to be able to kind of let that go. Sometimes that comes from the people around us and their feelings around alcohol too, and we kind of take that on. So, I don't know, hopefully just the understanding of the guidelines maybe can be helpful, that you're definitely well within that. But I would also be careful saying that, because if you're not, I don't know that you should feel guilty either, right? We're all grown-ups here. And
we're all grown-ups. I was just going to say that.
We can make it, we all get to make our own decisions, right? And so we have some information to help you make that decision, and you're not a bad person if you decide to drink. I don't know.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. We're all grown-ups. It's just about having the information so that you can then make the best decision for you.
I think it comes down to how you feel. I mean, when I was younger, I definitely was in the increasingly high risk category most of the time. And then I had forced sobriety because I had children, and I learned that I can still go out and do things and have a good time. And then I kind of realized I didn't feel so great. So I don't really drink very much anymore. And it wasn't even, a conscious health decision per se. It was just, I just noticed that I didn't feel so great. and I can still have a good time without
Because you
it.
metabolize
So,
it differently at
well,
different
and this is what
phases,
happens when you get
stages.
older, right? I mean, I was late in my 30s when I realized that when I was having my monthly cycle, that like, whew, you get intoxicated just like that. It's like took me like most of my life to realize that, right? Like our
Mhm.
hormones and everything really does play into it. So yeah, anyways, going off on a long tangent there, but no
No,
guilt in your no
good.
guilt in your wine glass,
That's
please.
good. I like it. I
Yeah,
think we just need those kinds of reinforcements too. So
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Tammy's asking, what is the percentage that the risk of cancer increases with moderate drinking?
So this is the tricky one. And so I have like this messy table here that
Okay.
there's like 12 reports that came out as part of these guidelines. So, and they presented it based on the average alcohol intake in grams per day. So one standard drink, fun fact, is 13.45 grams of pure alcohol. So if you're kind of doing a drink a day, this is what the kind of the column that I ended up looking like that, because that was the old guidelines, the average. When it comes to breast cancer, so at one drink a day, so that was a 14.7% increase compared to not
Right.
in risk. And it kind of goes up pretty fast. So if you're at 45 grams per day, that's that's about three drinks per, so, excuse me, 45 grams a day is three drinks a day, then it's a 50% 50% increase in risk, which is pretty significant. The biggest jump actually, and we don't hear this, I don't remember hearing this at all in the news or on this kind of graphic here, is liver cirrhosis. Liver cirrhosis goes up with like 5 grams a day of alcohol, which would be less than one drink a day for women. And so this was different for women than for men. They separated, or excuse me, females versus males, they separated it out by sex.
So
And
the
so
guidelines are the same, but
the guidelines are the
it's-
same, but the health impacts are more significant for women than for men.
Got it.
Or for females than for men. So and that's just because, you know, once we're at the higher intake, you know, the lifetime risk just increases more steeply for women than for men. We females absorb alcohol faster than males. And we experience more damage or disease to our bodies compared to males. Males are more likely to have issues with substance abuse and have more kind of physical injury as a result of drinking, whereas for women it's more we see increase in kind of disease and damage to our bodies.
Right. And most of what we heard on the news in January, February, when this report came out, was related to cancer. But the number one premature killer, or the number one health concern for women, is heart disease. Does it mention heart disease or dementia at all?
Yeah, so heart disease risk is it goes up at the higher drinking levels. So interestingly, ischemic heart disease, when they kind of broke it up by grams per day, it didn't actually have that same kind of steep increase the same way that breast cancer does. Yeah, but it still increases risk, right? Yeah. And then I'm trying to see if there's anything else. It does increase AFib and A-flutter, so if that's something you're experiencing, so there would be a 10% increase at that one drink a day, and then it continues up, but not in a steep, like exponential curve, if you will. So yeah, there's still an increased risk, but different conditions have different rates of increased risk at high, you know, for every extra drink, if you will.
And if anybody wants to do like a deep dive on this data, I'll include the link tomorrow. So I always send the replay in 24 hours, and I'll include the link to the report for you. Or if it's something that, you know, you want to take to your next health appointment to do a deeper dive to, because risk is always, relative and then real. And so you want to be able to make sure that you're making health decisions based on real risk. And if you currently have a health condition or a concern of any, that's going to be very individualized, and discuss that with your doctor.
Yeah, exactly. It's very different for a person that already has a lot of
Right.
increased risk factors versus maybe somebody that has no risk factors, and then
Yeah.
drinking is just the one.
Yeah, I mean, this is one element that we overlay over top of all the other things that are going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Demi wants to know, if I don't drink every week and then I go to a party and have 3 or 4 or 5 drinks, does that mean that I still fall into the moderate risk category?
It's kind of on average. So I would say no, but know that, there are those increased risk in that event for like your personal safety, right? So there's kind of risk of injury and, other things that women have to worry about. But no, it wouldn't kind of bump you up kind of overall. We're considering kind of lifetime consumption and overall averages.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think, Stephanie, this is probably the same question, just worded a little bit different, but can you talk about binge drinking a bit and how it reflects the per week totals?
So if you're drinking, 4 or 5 drinks a night, on a Friday or Saturday, you're in that high risk overall of the course of your week. So, having 3 or 4 alcohol-free nights and then, a high intake,
Saving it all up?
You're not kind of saving. Yeah, you're still going to have, I guess, essentially the same damage. So you kind of want to look at the average over the course of the week. And so, if you are having a high intake on Friday or Saturday, that it doesn't matter that you have maybe no drinking on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
Right. It's still, what does the average look like over the course of the week? And that those high intakes, that kind of binge drinking, is, has some higher health risks as well, right? Because of that, especially because of that personal safety.
And I'm going to ask this question because I know there's somebody out there who's thinking it, and you alluded to your younger days as well. So
Yeah.
if in our younger days we were drinking at an increasingly high risk rate, but now that we don't, how does that factor our?
Yeah, that's less clear, right? Because, I couldn't, and maybe it's there and I didn't find it. I couldn't find something that said, if you, drink too heavily to a certain point and then stop, you're gonna, recover your risk, or would you, repair kind of the damage and whatnot. So I think all you can do is, what you can do now. And, if you are considering reducing your drinking, you're definitely going to be reducing that health risk, based on what you're doing right now. And you can't change the past. You can't change the past.
Can't change the past.
You can't change the past. I think, we probably potentially like your liver health would be the one that might be,
right.
The one that kind of continues, but you can always go talk to your doctor and get some liver enzymes tested to see if there's any issues, right? That's an easy test to do.
Yeah. And again, nothing is happening in a vacuum. It's not
exactly
black and white. If you're, paying attention to how you eat, move, sleep, manage stress, all of those things are going to go into your plus column. But do check with your doctor anyway. I like Hope's question. I don't know if you have an answer for it or not, but Hope says, I drink strictly for social reasons because I like the feeling the first drink gives me. So I'm trying the alternating 1 drink of alcohol with 1 non-alcoholic. And I know this topic is about alcohol, but do you have any knowledge about anything else that might give me that same feeling, that same first drink feeling?
There's nothing I could recommend as a health professional that would not pose some sort of other risk to your health. But I hear that a lot, right? And I've even had clients that have done that activity where they're kind of looking at the cost of benefit and they're like, I know, the potential risk to my health, but I just kind of like the way it makes me feel. And so you're a grown up and you get to make that choice, right? Yeah. So no, I don't really know. I don't know of a good substitute for that feeling. But I think, those strategies that you're employing, is probably good, because if it's just the first one, it's kind of that law of diminishing returns, right? So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Good. I think that's all of the questions that we have in the chat. I'd like to ask you, I know that when you and I first met, you were showing me your brand new North American Menopause
Oh
Society
yeah,
book
the
and that
textbook.
you're studying with them. Tell us more about that and your work and how you're integrating the two.
Yeah, so I work with women in midlife, and I, had been doing that for a while when it occurred to me that, menopause happens during that time, and I thought, oh, I don't really know much about menopause, and I'm sure it has an impact. And then I started researching, and I was just kind of flabbergasted, right, at all that we didn't learn in school and whatnot. And so, I've started doing some research and looking at more places. And so I found the North American Menopause Society, and I know that they have a certification. So I have their textbook and I study it, and it has definitely helped me kind of, help guide conversations with my clients and refer them to other healthcare professionals. I'm not sure if I'm ready to get certified yet, but I think it's on the agenda for this year. But it has helped me kind of create more tools for my clients. And I do have a program right now that has kind of come from this work for those that do well with a group learning environment. I find learning things in community is really helpful, and research shows that it is helpful as well. So I just started it this year, and my third cohort will be in May. So if people resonated with the things that I say and found this helpful, do check it out. I did offer a discount code for people that are
Okay.
here or watching
Cool.
the replay. It's on the end of that thing. But yeah, I do hope to maybe to get that certification, because I think it's good to know more so that I can help people. My scope of practice is still dietetics, so medical nutrition therapy, and I am mostly looking at nutrition and some lifestyle factors to help people either manage symptoms or reduce risk for heart disease and breast cancer and things like that. But the manual and kind of studying with them has been really helpful, and being able to maybe identify things that people could talk to their doctor about, and kind of sharing information about how they could talk to their doctor,
Yeah.
and what some resources for their physicians might be.
And it's a group program?
It's a group program that has some one-to-one sessions as well. So I see
Okay.
people in group, but I also see people one-to-one. Yeah.
I like that, because I don't know that all of us are always thinking, oh, today's the day I'm going to go and book an appointment with a registered dietitian. Although, in my first book, Mokita, like I had an RD write a chapter, and it is an important part of our health team. But I like that maybe a group session like this might be the foray into working with a registered dietitian, and you can, find out what it's like and then take it from there.
Yeah. So, what everybody saw today is kind of my approach, right?
Okay.
And yeah.
And the other
That's
reason
that.
I like it, for those of you that are on this call that have taken the Menopause Chicks Masterclass, I always talk about the pyramid. It's a decision-making pyramid, Melanie, and at the top is eat, move, sleep.
Yeah.
But I always feel guilty. We were talking about guilty before. I always feel guilty that I say those words like so fast, because we're quickly going through, eat, move, sleep, manage stress, and then get curious about your nutrition. And then we end up spending a lot of the time talking about hormone therapy. So this is your invitation, if you will, to go back to the top of that pyramid and invest as some learning in eating and drinking.
Yeah.
And how that impacts your health.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. The biggest thing I actually see is cholesterol. Cholesterol does go up, right? And so I do a lot of cholesterol management with my one-on-one clients as well.
Amazing. So if we've had blood work recently and kind of either had a yellow flag or even no flag and just want some interpretation of what that means, you can help us with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for putting this together, for reaching out. I really appreciate it. Everyone, you'll get a copy of the replay tomorrow with a link to the work that Melanie does. And yeah, I'm going to print off my workbook right now and fill it out for myself.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It was great to be here.
Cheers.
Yeah. Take care.